The Victory Garden, Chapter 5. We were chattering around Miss Elliot's desk when the tardy bell rang. She had to shoo us to our seats for the flag salute. I felt pride as I recited it. The pledge reminded me of what Jeff was fighting for: liberty and justice for all. Other kids in school had brothers away. Uncles, cousins, even fathers were gone. The gardens were only a part of the war effort at home. We saved tinfoil and string, wore out our clothes, and walked holes in our shoe soles. At school, we skimped on paper because the government needed so much of it to print stamp books. Some of those books we emptied, others we filled. We emptied the ration books, tearing out coupons smaller than postage stamps to give to the grocer along with our money. Some stamps were for meat, others for sugar, coffee, or canned goods. Separate books rationed gasoline. It was a lot to keep track of. The back of the ration book says, important: salvage tin cans and waste fats. They are needed to make munitions for our fighting men. We did that and more. Then there were the books we filled. On Fridays, Miss Elliott put a mason jar on her desk. With every dime we dropped into it, we bought a red savings stamp with the soldier on it, stamp by stamp. We licked and stuck until our war bond booklets bulged. With luck, I would have all 185 10-cent stamps by the end of the summer. And then I could trade my book in for a bond. In 10 years, with interest, it would be worth $25 to help pay for college. We didn't go right into reading about the flag salute. Instead, Miss Elliott said, "Let's hear more about your summer plans." I held my breath as hands flew up and the kids called out their money making schemes. The neighbor will pay me to help her with canning. Mr. Perkins says all the teenagers will be working on farms. He'll need a kid at the IGA grocery to sweep and shelf canned goods. I work for my dad in the summer, painting houses. I get to do the porch railings. Others plan to water yards, mow lawns, babysit, run errands, do dishes, or dust houses. But not all the talk was of work. We'd be roller skating, riding bikes, and flying kites too, and sprinting through water sprinklers on hot afternoons and catching fireflies at night. I could hardly wait. I listened as Miss Elliott drew everyone out. Only Billy Riggs seemed to have no interest in summer. I saw him slumped in his seat, doodling in the margins of his arithmetic book. Miss Elliott was always pretty patient with Billy, considering he never did anything but draw war pictures: swastika decorated tanks with guns spitting bullets or bayonets dripping blood, enough to make you sick. When no one mentioned the garden, I knew I had to speak up. "I still want to work in Mr. Bert's garden," I said, trying to sound excited. Miss Elliott glanced expectantly from pupil to pupil. I kept talking, thinking how Tom Sawyer had gotten Ben Rogers and all those others to whitewash Aunt Polly's fence. He told his friends a boy didn't get a chance to whitewash every day. Make the thing difficult to attain, Mark Twain wrote. "You don't get a chance like this every day," I said. "The garden is already planted, and the food will all be ours, to sell, for money." Then I added the clincher, I thought. "But of course, we can't use too many people. We'd all be bumping into each other." No hands waved. "The downtown merchants will join together to donate one stamp for every stamp we buy with money from the garden," I said. I crossed my fingers in case it was a lie, but the merchants had done such things before. Andy Jones jumped to his feet. "Let's just take their stamps and forget about the work." For once, I appreciated Andy's clowning. The kids laughed and sat up a little straighter. "Who wants to help Teresa with the garden?" asked Miss Elliott. I was surprised at the first volunteer. "I will." It was Rich Gibbons, who had claimed to know all about gardening. I hoped he did. When Rich volunteered, Louise Lang quickly followed. I smiled. The next one surprised me even more. "Me too," said Andy. "Better than doing it at home." Then Maria raised her hand. "Even if you are nuts," her grin told me. "Count me in," said Scott Walker. "My mom says it's the decent thing to do." I swallowed hard. Scott's father was away. He had volunteered after Sonny Ferguson was killed in action. Miss Elliott wrote their names on the blackboard. "Who else?" she asked. The biggest surprise has yet to come. The biggest surprise was yet to come. Squeamish Ellie White stood up and said, I guess I like money more than I hate bugs. I was grinning now. Good. Everybody meet me at the Burt's Garden across the street from my house on Thursday after school. I skipped all the way home, my friend Maria beside me, barely keeping up. Can you come over? I asked her. I wouldn't be walking old Wolf. Mr. Bert's relatives had come for him that morning. Besides, with the stiff breeze blowing out of the south, it was a perfect day for flying the kite Dad and I had put together over the weekend. Sure. We finished tying white rags to the tail string and tried to launch the kite. I tossed it up while she let out the string. Then we tried it the other way around. But each time the kite sank back down to the ground. Lawrence Coffey came delivering the chronicle just as we were about to give up. Want some help? He asked. Hey, Koopa. Yeah, I said. Lawrence Coffey had been stuck with his nickname longer than anyone could remember. His senior class was down from 42 to 30, only 8 of them boys, so many had already gone off to war. How's your brother, Teresa? Flying rings around them Nazis? At least Koopa wasn't as somber as Mr. Burt. Good, as far as I know, I said. I'll be going too, soon as school's out. You've been drafted? Nah, wait for the draft. You're cannon fodder. Enlist and you can get what you want. Me, I want Navy. Hold or fly? Fly, I said, and handed him the stick with the kite string wound around it. Okay, before you take it up, face it into the wind. Say go. Go! I tossed the kite. Koopa ran a few steps, letting the string out gradually as the wind caught the kite and lifted it. You got it, Maria called. Gotta go, Koopa said. He handed me the string and took off with his papers. The kite dipped. I tightened up on the string, then felt a strong tug as it fluttered in the wind. My spirits soared with it. The sky was blue. The air hovered right between warm and cool, and I couldn't imagine any place nicer. I wondered what the kids overseas were doing right now. Were they flying kites or fleeing to air raid shelters? Do you ever think about why we were born in this country instead of where the war is? I asked Maria, passing the string to her for a turn. She gave me a strange look and no answer, but it was a good question, one I had asked myself over and over. We hadn't taken time for a snack. You hungry? I asked her after a while. Starved. We reeled the kite in and headed for the kitchen. I spread peanut butter on crackers while Maria filled 2 glasses with cold milk from the bottle. We took them to the dining room table. What in the world is that? Maria asked, nodding at the map on the wall. That is the world, I said, laughing. It's been there all along. Never noticed. Looks like we're in school. We moved it down from Jeff's room after Pearl Harbor. Dad mounted it on pasteboard from grocery boxes so we could stick pins in it. See? He marks the battle sites on it. Maria shrugged. She wasn't very interested in the war, but I could see why. She was the oldest child in her family, always taking care of the babies, and she called her little brothers. The only reason she wasn't home with them that afternoon was that her mother didn't have to work that day. She did take a second look at the map, though. It looks different from the one at school somehow. It is, I said, trying to spark her interest. That was Jeff's idea. He made it to mark the flights of famous aviators, but it works to follow the war too. Better than the one at school, I think. Why? Remember when Miss Elliot said a world map is made by opening up the globe and stretching it out flat? Uh huh. Well, if you open it up at a different place, the United States is in the middle here, I pointed. Now you can see where the war regions are in relation to us, one on each side. Japan on this side, I stretched out my left arm, and Europe on the other. Makes it easier to keep track of what's going on where. What's all that stuff on it? Flags. See? I touched a small piece of blue, shaped like a V, and flying from under the head of a pin stuck into the map. Rickrack? Yes. The blue is for our side, the Allies. I tried cutting little shapes out of paper, but they just tore. Mother came up with the rickrack from her sewing box. Not bad. What's the red for? The Japanese. There are 2 flags here, one red and one blue. Why? Wake Island, I said. The Japanese still hold it, and we're still trying to get it back. Oh, right, said Maria. After a moment, she added, That was where Sonny Ferguson was killed. I really didn't know him. More than a year had passed since Shady Grove's first gold star went up in the Ferguson's window, making the war so real, so terrible. Neither did I, but Jeff did, and everybody knows Sonny's father, the judge. They say they didn't find out where he died until later. I heard that. Another Marine came to town and told them. Somebody who had fought alongside Sonny. And they couldn't send his body home, but his parents felt better just knowing where he. Oh. Maria put her hand over her mouth. I knew what she was thinking. Jeff is in the air, I said. Marines fight on the ground. She was anxious to change the subject. Two flags on Japan. Two. Why? We bombed Tokyo a year ago. See? I read from the faded clipping I had taped to the edge of the map. Doolittle's B 25 bombs Tokyo. Jimmy Doolittle was one of Jeff's pilot heroes. That's why I saved the article. We had caught the Japanese completely by surprise. The writer called it stranger than fiction. The enemy thought our planes couldn't get all the way across the ocean to reach them. They were right, but we launched our bombers from the USS Hornet in the middle of a raging sea. Wow, but look here. Maria waved a finger over the red flags, pinned to islands in the Pacific Ocean. Haven't we captured anything? The newsreels keep saying we're so good. We are. Dad says our forces are far superior. I pointed to an island in the ocean between Alaska and Japan. Here's something we captured. Amchitka. What good is that? Very good. We could bomb Japan easily from there. I thought we already bombed them. I sighed. Maria was smart, but she didn't know much about wars. I should go now, she said. I walked her to the door and said goodbye. After I saw her out, I sipped at the last of my milk and stared at the map. On the right hand side, black flags. Black for the Axis swastika, dotted most of Europe where Germany had overrun its neighbors. One blue flag, however, pinned to Stalingrad in Russia, told a different story. It marked the place where one of Hitler's huge armies had finally met defeat. Jeff's dotted lines were still there, where he had traced historic flights, like Amelia Earhart's solo flight from Hawaii to California, and those of Charles Lucky Lindy, Lindbergh, and Billy Mitchell. Maybe it was reading about Mitchell that had made Jeff so sure he would get into another war, and that air power would decide the winner. Do you know Mitchell was court martialed for saying that? Jeff had told us at supper one night. They said he disgraced the army. Billy Mitchell had died 5 years before Pearl Harbor, but some of his predictions came true. His friend Hap Arnold, who had learned to fly from the famous Orville Wright, was now General H. H. Arnold, chief of the U.S. Army Air Forces. Jeff had always dreamed of flying with Hap Arnold, and now, in a way, he was. Lucky him. I ran my finger across the map and traced my own dream. Someday I would take a train from Kansas to New York City. Then I'd fly across the ocean to Sicily, that island at the toe of the boot of Italy, and sail across the Mediterranean Sea to North Africa. There wouldn't be any war then, and the water would be peaceful and as blue as my taffeta dress.